Come a little closer. I don't mean to be controversial, but Jamie Johnson left this for me, and it's the Orchard Experimental Glenfiddich. And in my opinion, the best whiskey is a whiskey that's been pilfered. I don't actually think she meant to leave this for me, but I have it in my possession anyway. Glenfiddich has had this whole new line of experimental whiskeys that they've started about several years back. And the idea being is to, kind of get outside their regular clientele, that's the 12, 15, and the 18, to do something a little bit different. And this one has been matured in barrels of apple brandy. The labeling is wonderful. I don't have the box. I didn't manage to pilfer that, but the box is beautiful. It's a green stag on this. And this will be in the market for as long as a year, 2, 3 years. It might become permanent. We just don't know. It might eventually be over. But I really like this whiskey because I think it's going after a whole new set of flavor profiles that a lot of whiskeys today don't have. And I think that's when you're a giant distiller like Glenfiddich, you want to create something that's unique in the marketplace, and you've got the brand behind it. And I think that's the difference. I think a small distillery might mature something in brandy, apple brandy barrels, and people would be like, ugh, they snob at it. But it's Glenfiddich doing it. You know it's going to be done right. And more importantly, they have access to the best oak programs. So let's have a taste. This is my first time tasting it. In fact, I've had this several times now, and I keep meaning to write a review about it. Now, might as well get the rest of this in here. Now look, I really like this whiskey, and I think it's because it tastes and noses like a single malt Scotch. There's no doubt about it, it's a single malt Scotch. You're not going to get apple brandy on the nose anywhere, but you are going to get something refreshing, and it is a little bit like biting into a green apple, like that kind of, you bite into it and you get that nose, that just appley nose, subtle but there, and it's there on the nose, but it's more on the liqueur side, so it's a little sweeter. It's got that, I don't want to say candied apple because that implies a lot of caramel notes, which this does not have. It's just on a sweeter side, but you get a lot of complexity. You get this ginger, and there's definitely like a herbal and a floral note that's just lifts up the palate and just catches your attention. As per usual, Glenfiddich's American oak program is fantastic. They use terrific American oak barrels to age the majority of their whiskey, and I assume a lot of this has been aged in American oak before it's been transferred to brandy barrels. But the nose it's enough Glenfiddich that I'm thinking it's Glenfiddich, but then it's got this twist that takes you somewhere else. This is very fancy on the palate. But it's fancy on the palate in the way like hard jazz music is fancy. It's well dressed. It has properly groomed. It's rich and luscious on the palate. And then the music starts to play, and now it's a little bit of chaos. The sweetness is there, but it's overwhelmed with a lot of American oak spice. It's bordering on paprika, very spicy, buttery, and dry as well through the finish. I don't think it's very syrupy, though I have had it, the first few times I've had it, I would probably get slightly more syrupy notes to it, and the whiskey does change a tiny bit as it gets towards the end of the bottle there. So it's not quite as syrupy as I remember, but it does have that kind of candied apple syrup note to it, but it's so gentle, it doesn't overpower. And if you know me and kind of whiskeys that I like, I don't want overly sweet whiskeys. In fact, that's why I generally don't lean towards rums and other sweeter spirits, because I do the dryness and I do the spice, and this definitely is in my wheelhouse. It's not too sweet. It just has a nice dryness to it. I'm getting some cinnamon spice on this, probably from the barrels themselves, from the brandy barrels, and it's a really nice finish. What I like about this whiskey, it tells a complete story. It's not going to be overly complex. This is a whiskey that's under $100, but it has a lot present, and it really gets the palate going. And I think if I were doing my next whiskey tasting, I would probably start the day with this, because I think if you're doing a lineup of interesting scotches, this is the one that just, boom, your palate's immediately awake. So anyway, Glenfiddich Orchard Experimental, line of experimental casks. As we know from the previous releases, they come and go, so we don't know how much longer this one will be in the market, but it is recently released, so hopefully that means good things for this brand. I definitely recommend it, especially for the price point. Would I score it in the high 80s? Probably not. It's probably more in the mid 80s, but that's not against the whiskey. This is a great price point with a terrific balance to it. What it does so well. This is a great one to have on your whiskey cabinet. My name is Mark Bialock. I'm a whiskey author and a reviewer. Subscribe to the channel, buy my book, do all that other stuff. I think that's what people say these days, like the channel. But thank you so much for listening. Hope you enjoy. Cheers.